as I was saying at the end of the last video, at least one of my early classrooms, second, third grade-ish, had a little chill out corner in the back. The classroom had a little chill out corner in the back, one which I don't even remember what that was called. I don't remember being called timeout. I just remember that the way I remember it, I spent more time back there than anyone else in the class. Someone else might remember the same thing about themselves. Someone else entirely might remember the same thing about me. But the nice thing was, as opposed to your stereotypical standing in the corner as punishment, it was definitely sort of a timeout room. The fact that it was in the back, sort of partitioned off by the rest of the room. So you didn't see out, they didn't see in. You could still hear what was going on. You know, they could call to you if it was necessary to come back or something like that. There were, I feel like there was a couch, definitely some pillows, probably some books and stuff. So it wasn't like you're sitting there shamed in the front of the room. You just actually get a little comfortable, reduced environment in the back. One interesting thing that ties in with the recent thoughts about autism regarding me. So I barely remember first grade, but I know that through second and third grade, I had a lot of sort of behavior issues. Again, they were more sort of, as I think I said before, I don't remember the word meltdown ever being used, but in retrospect, it looks a lot like that. It wasn't that I was misbehaving in the sense of acting out. I just didn't have the kind of emotional regulation, sensory regulation, that sort of thing. So you know, freaked out a lot, spent a lot of time in the timeout, whatnot. And when I went into, and I ate a peanut butter sandwich every day for lunch, like a lot of kids do, like adults do. But for some reason, as I entered fourth grade, I decided I was going to eat lunch meat sandwiches because that would be the more mature thing to do. I wasn't some little peanut butter kid anymore. I was going to eat, lunch meat sandwiches like a mature person who eats lunch meat sandwiches. I don't know. Seems kind of silly now, especially now that I'm a vegetarian, but that was the thing. And also that year, as I was going into fourth grade, I just didn't have the kind of emotional behavioral outbursts that I had before then. And it seemed like, oh, I am older, I'm more mature, I've outgrown some kind of behavioral phase, so that's all good. And then at some point, I'm not even sure how long it's a year, at some point, my mom ran out of lunch meat for sandwiches. She made me a peanut butter sandwich for lunch. I ate the peanut butter sandwich for lunch. I'm not sure if it was just one day or a few days, but all of a sudden, behavioral problems, emotional regulation problems, freakouts started happening again. And I know that there's been a lot of controversy about specific diets, specific foods for autism, for reducing autism symptoms, if symptom is even the right word, etc. People talk about no gluten, no casein, this and that, no artificial colors, this and that. I don't know if any of those things hold up in general across the board, but I know that I had behavioral issues tied to a specific foodstuff, which led to me determining that I had a problem with peanuts and other related peanuts, garbanzo beans, etc. And just while specific foods for autism doesn't necessarily seem to be a thing that's agreed upon, I feel like the idea that I would have problems based on a specific food affecting my behavior and self-control. That seems pretty solid. That seems like pretty good evidence of, argument, not proof of, but argument toward the autism diagnosis. I often ask myself, as other people who were not diagnosed young, ask themselves, would it have been better to have been identified, diagnosed at an early age? I would say that, I was formally diagnosed with ADHD at about age 32 or so. And then just in the last year, when I was 49, I had the thought that, hey, these things I see in myself really seem like what gets called autism. Gonna have to see if the purring drowns me out entirely in this video. If I was born much later than I was, and I was in school now and got these diagnoses, that might easily have been better for me than the education I had. Unfortunately, at the time, in the 70s and 80s, there was so little understanding of ADHD and even less of autism, the forms autism takes. Just for one example, I was the Lorna Wing's popularization of the spectrum concept that, oh wow, autism can show up in a variety of different ways. That was published, I believe, in 1979. So I was already into elementary school when that happened, and things like that certainly don't permeate the psychosphere and the educational system immediately. It's not like by 1980 everyone was like, oh, we know what the autism spectrum is. If I had been diagnosed as a child with either of these things, the options available to me at the time were definitely not better than what I had education-wise, and might not have been better for me than the standard default schooling I would have gotten had my parents not made sure I got into certain schools, certain classes, and whatnot. So while it might have been nice to know about these things before my 30s, 40s, into 50s, which I am now 50, sometime earlier than that would have been good, but getting those labels in the 70s and 80s would likely have done more harm than good. And I'll leave that there for now.